Today, I want to share something deeply personal. Not because it's easy, but because sometimes the truths that hurt the most are the ones that finally set us free. It started on an ordinary Thursday morning, the kind of morning that looks harmless from the outside. I was standing in front of the mirror, brushing my hair, when I suddenly stopped and looked at myself. The sunlight was slipping through the blinds, landing on my face, highlighting the exhaustion I had been trying to hide. I saw the same woman I always did, same face, same tired smile, but something inside her felt gone. Her eyes were familiar but empty, as if the person within had quietly left a long time ago. From the outside, everything in my life looked perfect. A steady marriage, two wonderful kids, a nice home tucked away in a quiet corner of Seattle. Was the kind of life people post about on social media. Peaceful, stable, ideal. But on the inside, something had been fading for a long time. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was a slow erosion, a quiet emptiness that no one else could see. My name is Rachel Porter, and once upon a time, I truly believed I had everything figured out. I believed that if I followed the rules, stayed disciplined, said yes when I was supposed to, and kept doing what was right, life would naturally fall into place. I thought happiness was a reward for doing everything correctly. But life doesn't always work that way. Ethan, my husband, was a good man. Dependable, thoughtful, organized, the kind of person who pays the bills early, fixes things before they break, and never forgets to take out the trash. For years, I loved that about him. His predictability gave me a sense of safety. But after 12 years of marriage, that steady flame turned into something smaller. Not gone, just dim. What we had wasn't fiery love anymore. It's quiet routine. We didn't argue often, but we didn't talk much either. We simply existed to people sharing a space, but not really sharing a life. I wouldn't say I was unhappy, just empty. It's that kind of loneliness that creeps in slowly, where the silence between you starts to feel louder than words ever could. Some nights, I'd lie awake beside Ethan, listening to him breathe, wondering if he felt the same void. But I never asked. Maybe I was afraid of what he'd say, or worse, that he wouldn't understand. Then one day, someone new walked into my life. His name was Lucas Grant. He was a freelance designer who joined our marketing team. From the first moment, there was something about him, not in a romantic way, at least not at first. He carried an easy warmth, a calm confidence. He wasn't loud or flashy, but he had a way of making people listen when he spoke. His laugh was natural, effortless, the kind of sound that made a room feel lighter. At first, our conversations were strictly professional. Simple, polite, harmless. But deep down, something stirred inside me, something I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't attraction exactly, more like curiosity, or maybe recognition. One afternoon after a long meeting, Lucas looked at me and said, "You always seem like the one holding everything together." It was such a simple observation, but it hit me harder than I expected. No one had ever said that to me before. No one had noticed what it cost to always be the strong one. That moment was small, but it was the start of everything. Lucas didn't try to impress me. He didn't flirt or push. He just noticed things, small, human things that most people overlook. He asked what kind of music made me emotional, what books I used to love before life became a checklist, what places I once dreamed of visiting. And for the first time in years, I felt like someone was actually listening. Not to my words, but to me. I tried to tell myself it was just friendship. It's a simple connection between two colleagues. But deep down, I already knew. Because when attention becomes the thing you've been starving for, even a small bit of it can feel like air after years of holding your breath. At home, Ethan was quieter than ever. He was buried in work, distracted by responsibilities, always somewhere else mentally. Our conversations had become practical. Did you pick up milk? What time's the meeting? The water heater's leaking again. There was no laughter, no spark, just routine. We were two people managing a house, not living in one. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, I finally tried to bridge the gap. "Do you ever feel like we're just existing?" I asked. He looked up from his laptop, a little confused. "What do you mean? I don't know." I said softly. I just feel tired." He smiled kindly. "We're all tired, Ra. It's just life." Then he kissed my forehead and went back to typing, and that was it. No curiosity, no follow-up. Just the quiet dismissal of a man who didn't see that his wife was disappearing right beside him. That night, as I lay awake, I realized something painful. You can be loved deeply and still feel invisible. The next morning, Lucas stopped by my desk with a cup of coffee. "You look like you could use this," he said with a smile that wasn't pity, just kindness. I wanted to tell him, "Don't be nice to me," because kindness feels dangerous when you've been starved of it. But I didn't. I just smiled back and said, "You have no idea." It wasn't flirtation. Not yet. It was two people quietly admitting that they both carried more than they showed. After that, everything started to shift. Slowly, quietly, dangerously. I began looking forward to work in ways I couldn't explain. Counting down minutes to the next meeting, the next conversation, the next small escape from the dull grayness of my routine. I kept telling myself it was harmless. Everyone wants connection. Everyone wants to be seen. But deep down, I knew the truth. The moment you start needing someone else to feel alive, you're already walking away from yourself. It started small. A shared joke. Text about work that turned personal. A glance that lingered longer than it should have. Each moment felt innocent on its own, but together they were weaving a thread I couldn't ignore. One night, we stayed late at the office finishing a presentation. The building was quiet, the air still. He leaned over my shoulder to show me something on my screen, his breath brushing against my neck. My pulse jumped. For a split second, time stopped. Then he stepped back, cleared his throat, and whispered, "Sorry." "It's okay," I replied, though my voice trembled. That was the moment I realized how fragile control can be when you've been lonely too long. After that, the silence between us wasn't the same. We didn't talk about what happened, but we didn't have to. Every look carried a weight, every conversation a hidden current. I started paying more attention to how I dressed, pretending it was for myself. But deep down, I knew who I wanted to notice. Ethan noticed too, but not in the way I hoped. "You've been distracted lately," he said one night. "Something going on at work?" I smiled too quickly. "It's just a big project." He nodded, trusting me completely. That blind trust hurt more than anger ever could. A week later, after another long day, Lucas offered me a ride home. It was raining, soft but steady. The kind of rain that turns the world outside into a blur. We talked about everything and nothing. Work, life, how strange it is to wake up one day and not recognize your own reflection. When we reached my house, neither of us moved. The air between us was heavy, filled with things neither of us dared to say. Then, in a quiet voice, he said, "You don't have to keep pretending you're okay." Something inside me broke. I wanted to say, "I'm fine," but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I turned toward him, and in that fragile human moment, I crossed a line I could never uncross. The kiss wasn't wild or dramatic. It was quiet, honest, painful. And when it ended, I knew nothing would ever be the same. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay beside Ethan, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of guilt pressing down. Guilt is strange. It's both sharp and dull, a storm that never fully passes. But underneath it all, I felt something else too. I felt alive, and that scared me more than anything. Weeks went by. Lucas and I never spoke of that night again, but every glance, every silence carried its shadow. Until one evening, Ethan found the messages. I had left my phone charging in the kitchen. He picked it up to check the time. It's all it took. He scrolled. He read. He froze. When I walked in, I saw it on his face, shock, then confusion, then the heavy silence of understanding. "Rachel," he whispered. "What is this?" There was no excuse to give, no lie that would fix it. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice cracking. "Was it him?" he asked. I nodded. He didn't shout, didn't curse. He just went silent. And that silence was the loudest thing I've ever heard. Finally, he asked, Why? I had no answer that made sense. Because how do you explain that you didn't want to ruin anything? You just wanted to feel alive again. Ethan moved out a week later. No fights, no yelling, just a man carrying a suitcase and a silence too heavy to lift. The house felt hollow without him. Every corner echoed with memories. The kids adjusted faster than I did. Children have a way of accepting change because they have no choice. I woke up each morning with the ache of what I'd broken. Lucas reached out, texts, emails, quiet apologies, but I couldn't face him. Whatever we had, it wasn't love. It was escape. And escape doesn't last. Eventually, the messages stopped. Story ended without a final word. Months passed. I started therapy. At first, it felt mechanical, answering questions, sitting through awkward silence. But over time, I began peeling back layers I didn't know existed. One day, my therapist asked, "When did you stop showing up for yourself?" That question hit me hard. Maybe it was the day I stopped writing, or the day I convinced myself that being a good wife and mother meant giving up everything that made me feel alive. Maybe it was all those quiet nights I chose comfort over honesty. I didn't stop loving Ethan. I just stopped loving myself. When you disappear from your own life long enough, you start reaching for anything that reminds you you're still here. It's been almost a year since everything fell apart. Ethan and I talk now kindly, carefully. We meet for family dinners. There are cracks that will never fully close, but there's also respect. A strange peace comes from telling the truth instead of hiding from it. Sometimes when I catch his eyes across the table, I see glimpses of who we once were. The laughter, the warmth. But I don't mistake it for a promise. Some things can be healed, but not everything returns to what it was. I live slower now. I take walks. I read again. I write again, even when it hurts. And I've learned something important. Infidelity isn't always about desire. Sometimes it's about absence. The absence of attention, of care, of recognition. No one wakes up one day and decides to destroy their life. It happens quietly, one unmet need at a time. People think betrayal is one big moment. But really, it starts long before, in silence, in neglect, in the tiny cracks where connection fades. I don't justify what I did, but I understand it now. I understand that love can't survive on routine alone. That connection needs to be nurtured, not assumed. Being good at life means nothing if you lose yourself in the process. Sometimes, late at night, I still wonder if Ethan will ever truly forgive me, or if I'll ever forgive myself. But maybe forgiveness isn't an ending. Maybe it's the choice to keep walking, even when the road is heavy with regret. What I did didn't give me freedom, it gave me truth. And truth, I've learned, is both the heaviest burden and the lightest thing to carry. This was my story, but maybe it's also a reminder for anyone listening. Dante, wait until you vanish from your own life to realize that you deserve to be seen, heard, and valued. Sometimes the most dangerous silence I send between two people. It's the one you build inside yourself,